It was summer, 1975. My parents had decided to take the family to a popular campground called Upper Narrows Campground in South Willow Canyon, approximately 50 miles or so west of Salt Lake City, Utah. Camping, hunting, and fishing was often the family activities during the summer months of my youth, and we were all experienced outdoorsmen. Equally, we often went treasure hunting and searching for ancient ruins, rock writings, and forgotten mining settlements. By age 16, I was traveling alone with my Irish setter named Gypsy into the deserts of mountains of Utah, sometimes for a week at a time. All of my family, myself included, had experienced some sort of phenomena firsthand through our respective lives. Through most of my teen life we had poltergeist and other strange paranormal activity in our home, caused by a harmless but often protective ghost we nicknamed Charlie. Charlie would sometimes manifest as an odd little white dog, which appeared to be a cross between a ferret and Pomeranian, with a long bushy tail. It would appear in the hallway of our basement living room while we watched TV. Gypsy, my Irish setter, would always dart after the critter. The white dog, which never made a sound, would run down the hallway with Gypsy in hot pursuit, then turn sharp into the bathroom and vanish. Gypsy would be found whining and scratching at the corner where the bathtub joins against the wall, as if the white dog had gone right through it. Needless to say, not much in life sent us into a panic. So I was a bit confused by the attitude of my parents one morning following our first night camping in South Willow Canyon. We had arrived late on a Friday afternoon. My parents and younger sister would sleep in a large double-sized Coleman tent with a zip-style divider while I and my dog shared my smaller two-man tent several yards away. While camping, my mother often slept on a single cot to keep the chill of the hard ground from her bones. As everyone camping did, we built a cozy campfire and spent the rest of the evening roasting marshmallows over the fire with brief interludes of John Denver songs I would play on my guitar. There were several other groups of campers nearby doing pretty much the same thing, and all seemed as normal as any weekend camping trip in the mountains could be. Sometime around midnight we all retired to our sleeping bags for the night, looking forward to enjoying nature the following day. It was between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. later that following morning when Gypsy woke me up. She was pacing the small confines of the tent and whining, and occasionally laying down flat and growling. I thought she had pee, so I unzipped the flap of the tent to let her out. Instead, she moved to the back of the tent and laid down still whining. Gypsy was as spoiled and pampered as a dog could be, so I assumed she just needed some coaxing to go out from the warm tent into the cool night air to do her business. I reached over and grabbed her collar while coaxing her toward the open tent door. She then did something she's never done. She growled harshly and bit my wrist, not hard, but enough to warn me off. Something was definitely bothering her, and the first thing I thought of was that she sensed a bear or cougar nearby, as had happened a year earlier when a young black bear strolled too near our camp while at Christmas Meadows in the Uinta Mountains. She would only act that way if she felt an immediate threat to her welfare. It was under this assumption that I quietly zipped the tent flap back up so as not to make any noise that might attract the predator. I sat back away from the main opening and stroked Gypsy along her backside to keep her quiet and calm. The small triangle-shaped window flap at the opposite end of the tent was open, and through the mosquito netting I stared into the darkness for any sign of movement. After about 3 minutes, Gypsy, who was laying flat on the sleeping bag beside me, began to growl again. It was an unnerving growl, not only because of its guttural depth emanating from deep within her, but also because I had never heard her make such a sound before, not even when the ghostly white dog would appear in our basement. I remember hearing my heart pounding in my ears and wondering if the predator could also hear it. Then suddenly, out through the triangle window of the tent, I saw a light coming up an old dry creek bed towards our camp. It was a small white light and danced low to the ground. I remember breathing a huge sigh of relief when I saw this light because it looked just like someone walking towards us with a small flashlight. Someone was up and probably walking to the outhouse from a nearby camp. Most wild animals avoid humans if possible, even bear and cougar. I was certain the camper walking to the toilets would scare the animal off and we could get back to sleep. What I couldn't figure out is why the camper had chosen to walk up the rocky, uneven, dry creek bed when the paved path was only several yards off to the side. I decided he must have been disoriented, or perhaps hungover, as the camp next to us had engaged in some serious partying earlier in the evening. I watched the light dance and bounce its way up the creek bed until it disappeared out of view of my tent window. I figured Gypsy had growled as she did because she deemed the intruder to be a threat to us. She was an excellent watchdog and usually fearless. I slid back down into my sleeping bag, and after throwing a light blanket over Gypsy, I went back to sleep. Morning finally arrived, and the smell of campfire smoke, eggs and bacon filled the air as the other campers also started to wake up, eager to start their day of fishing or just relaxing. I was ready for the day as well, and quickly slid into my sneakers and jacket and crawled out of my tent into the crisp mountain air. My mom and sister were preparing eggs and hash browns on the picnic table near their tent, while my dad busied himself trying to light the Coleman stove. It was after about 10 minutes that I noticed how unusually quiet everyone seemed. There was lacking the normal cheery enthusiasm and comments about how nice it was to be away from the city. I don't recall anyone even saying good morning. I presumed they were just tired, having stayed up until almost midnight the night before. We were halfway through breakfast when my mom asked if I had noticed anything strange during the night. Assuming they had been awakened by Gypsy's growling and the camper fumbling up the creek bed to the toilets, I told them about my experience and how strange Gypsy had acted. I told them how Gypsy had actually bit me when I tried to put her out of the tent. My mom hesitated a moment, then told me that sometime in the night she had been awaked by a strange buzzing sound. It sounded like the zipper on the flap of canvas divider that divided the two sections of their tent. My mom thought my sister was trying to get out to go to the toilet, so she naturally sat up in her cot and called to my sister to wait while she dressed. That was when she had the scare of her life. She could see in the dim glow that her cot was floating off the ground about 3 feet, halfway between the floor and the roof of the tent. She tried to scream, but her voice was mute. She laid back down in the cot believing it was a bad dream and begged herself to wake up. She felt a slight bump against the cot and opened her eyes again, expecting to see something there. She rolled quickly to reach for my dad, who was on the ground beside her, when she realized that the cot had settled back down to the floor of the tent. She still couldn't speak, but shook my dad's sleeping bag to arouse him, but he didn't move. Finally, he came around and sat up and put his arms around my mom without asking what was wrong. Suddenly, her voice returned and she could speak, but only softly, as if she had laryngitis. She told him how her cot had been floating, and how she tried to scream but couldn't, and how she tried to wake him up but he wouldn't move. Dad then told her that he had not been asleep. Something had woke him up, and he had seen my mom's cot floating above him. Dad had also heard the strange buzzing sound. He had witnessed my mom's entire ordeal, but could do nothing to help her. Something had pinned him down and he could neither move nor speak. There was somberness in the atmosphere around the picnic table. Then, Dad announced that we were going to pack up and leave right after breakfast, and although I was disappointed, I thought better of complaining. Something happened during the night and it scared the hell out of them both. And me and Gypsy also. While my mom and my sister cleaned up breakfast, Dad began taking down the tent. That was my cue to do the same, which I did with some reluctance. None of us are sure what happened that summer night in South Willow Canyon, but it soon came to be treated as a family inside joke. Whenever someone asked where we should go camping, one of us always answered, "How about South Willow Canyon?" It's now been almost 48 years since that strange event, and yet I often wonder what forces were at work South Willow Canyon that night. Was it an alien or UFO event? Was it a ghost or haunting? Or could the events have been caused by some rare geological electromagnetic activity that had caused the strange light, pinned my father down, and had the ability to make cots and people float? I never went back. Neither has my mom or dad or sister. If you've been to South Willow Canyon, let me know in the comments if you've experienced something strange up there. By the way, South Willow Canyon is only a good rock's throw from the infamous Dugway Proving Grounds, the top secret military base, or the other Area 51.